Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Quite a crowd this evening. Welcome to the Alpharetta City Council chambers. We appreciate you joining us this evening for the November 1st, 2021 City Council meeting. Go ahead and call this meeting to order and note for the record that all members of council are present and accounted for. And as we always do, we're going to begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you can, please stand and join us for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We begin this meeting with several presentations and proclamations, first of which will be Arts Alpharetta Board Member recognition of Ben Hollingsworth. Ms. Murphy, if you'll join me up front. So I think a few of you may recognize this man that we're recognizing this evening. Mr. Hollingsworth is a founder of Alpharetta's historical movement, and he has been a huge part of our cultural arts programs for years and decades. So we do have a proclamation to recognize that service to our community. Ms. Murphy, I'll turn the mic over to you, and maybe you can do him a little more justice.
I'm happy to do that. Ben is probably the reason I'm involved in the city of Alpharetta to the level that I am today. We were both educators together a long time ago, and he was my teacher for some classes that I took, but he invited me to get involved in the arts in Alpharetta. And so he's the reason why I'm here, but he's been a big part of a lot of the art that you see around town and about the opportunities that we've had presented. So it's been my honor to do this work for you, and thanks for being the inspiration.
For those that you don't know, Ben is actually a past president of the Historical Society. And many, many years, he's doing the public relations for us, and I think it's fitting that tonight, he's kind of a low-key, quiet, kind of a shy guy, but I think it's appropriate that we give him the recognition well-deserved.
This is really overwhelming to me. It's a great honor. And I'd like to quote George Busby. Pam reversed this on me today. I'm a workhorse, not a show horse. And I'm always working behind the scenes rather than being the one that's quoted in the newspaper or in the videos that come out on the news. So I'm very honored with this presentation.
Thank you very much, sir. And if by chance none of you have actually seen any examples of his creativity and artistic abilities, there's an example across the hall if you want to go over to the art exhibit in the community room over there. His self-portrait is my favorite, only because I know that must have taken a lot to prompt him to do a self-portrait. He's quite a humble man, and we're grateful for it. So now I'll go ahead and read this proclamation. And this is a proclamation by the mayor and council of the city of Alpharetta, Georgia. Whereas Ben Hollingsworth is a longtime resident of Alpharetta. He served in the National Guard from 1967 to 1973. And he has held leadership positions in many agencies, of which he is currently volunteers and offers support. and services. He has been a committed and dedicated supporter of the arts and history for Alpharetta since 2009 and continues to be involved with the Alpharetta and Old Milton County Historical Society. And whereas Ben Hollingsworth has been recognized by many public and private agencies for his talents and expertise in the arts and history. He holds a master's degree in art education and was an art teacher at both public school and university levels for 32 years. He taught in Fulton County at Haynes Bridge Middle School and at Chattahoochee High School in Cobb County, in Jackson, Mississippi, and he was an adjunct professor at Georgia State University. And whereas Ben Hollingsworth served on the city's Historic Preservation Commission, where he assisted in identifying over 60 properties to create the city's Historic Resources Inventory, contributing historic buildings list. This list was incorporated into the city's Historic Preservation Incentive Zoning Ordinance, and whereas Ben Hollingsworth is a member of the East Cobb Quilters Guild, the Chattahoochee Evening Stars, and the Fiber Art Fusion Group, he has won numerous awards locally, regionally, and nationally over a 15-year period. He has works displayed in multiple gallery shows, including the Community Garden and the Alpharetta Art Center. And whereas Ben Hollingsworth partnered with the mayor and the city council to create the vision and the mission for the opening of the Alpharetta Art Center in 2018, which is the city's beautiful, contemporary, multi-use facility that includes studios for instruction, performances, gallery exhibitions, and indoor and outdoor arts events. And whereas Ben Hollingsworth was a key member of the inception of the Arts Alpharetta in 2015 and currently holds the position of vice president. He also serves as the chair of the Public Art Committee for Arts Alpharetta, and that committee leads the curation of public art, including outdoor sculpture, gallery exhibits, and Play Me Again pianos. If you haven't seen those anywhere, you've missed it. And now, therefore, we, the mayor and city council of the city of Alpharetta, do hereby thank Ben Hollingsworth for his tireless support of Alpharetta and for his service to the community. I hereby proclaim Ben Hollingsworth as an Alpharetta patron of arts and culture in the date of November 1st, 2021 as Ben Hollingsworth Day.
Thank you for the turnout.
Thank you, well said.
Director Robinson, I believe you have the next presentation.
Dan. Yeah, I heard Rachel. You good?
That's the only one I was really concerned about tonight. I got a good report.
Clear out of here for a minute. Yeah, I'm not asking.
Well, good evening, everyone. This is a presentation for our accreditation night. This is a little bit unusual in that normally somebody from the organization, which I'll explain just in a minute, comes and presents this to us. However, because of COVID, they're not coming, so I guess I'm actually presenting this to us, which is a little awkward and strange, but nonetheless, we're very proud to be here. So let me give you a little bit about this. Is CLIA is a Commission on Accreditation for Law Enforcement Agencies was created in 1979 as a credentialing authority through the joint efforts of law enforcement's major executive associations. Those associations are International Association of Chiefs of Police, National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives, National Sheriff's Association, and Police Executive Research Forum. The law enforcement accreditation process focuses on standards that provide best practices relating to life, health, and safety procedures for the agencies. These standards are considered foundational for contemporary law enforcement agencies and provide a framework for addressing high-risk issues within today's environment. The Advanced Law Enforcement Program is specifically designed for elite organizations striving to demonstrate professional excellence with a comprehensive range of operational and administrative functional responsibilities. The program includes 458 standards that have to be met, ranging across several topics: agency role, authority, responsibility, weapons and training, standard operations, personnel management, recruitment and hiring, career development, and evidence management. So on the law enforcement side, this is actually our 9th accreditation. We're one of 45 in the state that have this, and just to give you some context, there are over 400 police or law enforcement agencies throughout the state, so this is rare to have this level of excellence regarding CALEA, and so we're grateful for that. This all is a credit to the wonderful men and women that work for our department, the great job that they do. You know, we strive to be a professional excellence department regardless, but it is nice to be recognized by an organization that nationally basically emphasizes the importance of professionalism in our profession. So we're very excited about that. So one of these is for that, and I will give that to myself in a little while. How about that? So
I'll present it.
the other one that I want to mention real fast, though, and this is really cool, and I am going to present this one, is also we have CALEA regarding communications. And this is the first time we've had an opportunity for this to happen. The communications accreditation process provides a communication center with a process to systematically review and internally assess its operations and procedures. This program requires organizations to collect and analyze important data for the purpose of making sound operational, administrative, business decisions, creating leadership and practitioner accountability. In addition, the focus is on quality assurance, interoperability, emerging technologies, risk analysis, asset security, resource access, contemporary training, and a range of other operational functions. This program has 207 standards ranging from recruitment, selection, and promotion, training, operations, and critical incidents. So again, this is our first one for our communications folks, and they're one of only 12 in the state. And I want to recognize some people here that have made this happen. First of all, Kate Fikes to my left, she's our accreditation manager for our entire department. She does a phenomenal job, and we could not do this without her. But I especially want to recognize folks to my right here from our 911. We have an unbelievable 911 center, one of the best in the country, and we are very blessed with that. And the 4 folks I have standing here have done a phenomenal job in making sure that we have this happening. Chief Carl Hall, Ben Bowen, Leslie Pinkerton, and Tony Hill. Where's Tony? Tony's back there taking a picture. So anyway, we could not have done it without them. And again, they've already set the bar on professionalism in this profession, but it's nice to be recognized by an organization that's what they do. And so I especially want to congratulate our 911 folks for their first accreditation with CALEA. So let's give them a hand. So let me get. Congratulations. Good job.
I guess we can do. Tony, did you want to get down?
Come on, Tony.
Come on, Tony.
Well, white balance for that shirt.
He was deer hunting earlier. That's punching for a day.
3, 2, 1. Very good.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
You doing too?
Well, I'll give you a picture. Sure. Okay. All right. What is it?
I thought the people who did something ought to get in.
Very good.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thanks. Thank you, sir.
We have 2 other proclamations. I believe they were both sponsored by the same organization. We have representatives. No? Okay. Well, I take it then the sponsors did not attend?
Is it for Patriots of Liberty?
Yes.
Yes, that's us.
Okay.
Come on, Bonnie.
About our children in the American Revolution, too.
That's awesome. Well, thank you. So if you don't mind, just tell us a little bit about what brought you here.
Okay, so we're part of the Patriots of Liberty, Daughters of American Revolution, and Colson is our Georgia State Society historian for the Children of the American Revolution. So we're here to accept the proclamation for Veterans Day and for Native American Heritage Month.
Thank you. And we'll begin with Veterans Day. This is a proclamation by the Mayor and Council of the City of Alpharetta, Georgia, Veterans Day 2021. Whereas the citizens of Georgia and the United States of America live in freedom because of the contributions and personal sacrifices made by those who have served and by those now serving in the armed forces. And whereas our nation has fought and continues to fight battles around the world for the ideals of liberty and justice, the words of the first Veterans Day proclamation signed by President Eisenhower still ring true. Let us solemnly remember the sacrifices of all those who fought so valiantly on the seas, in the air, and on foreign shores to preserve our heritage of freedom, and let us reconsecrate ourselves to the task of promoting and enduring peace so that their efforts shall not have been in vain. And whereas Georgia has always provided its best and brightest sons and daughters to serve bravely in America's armed forces, we remember with somber and grateful hearts those men and women who have served in the military with distinction and valor, and offer sincere prayers for those who continue to defend the principles on which our nation was founded. And whereas we will endeavor to always honor the contributions and sacrifices of the millions of Georgians who have, over the centuries, served in the military, and the tens of thousands presently serving, both at home and abroad. And whereas the advent of the all-volunteer military has reduced the number of individuals and families with any personal connection to the armed forces, resulting in decreased awareness of the importance of the accomplishments of those who have served. And whereas the state of Georgia is home to more than 776,000 veterans and tens of thousands of our nation's military families, we are proud to recognize our country's veterans and extend the appreciation of our citizens to those who wear the uniform of the United States Armed Forces and serve on the front lines preserving freedom and liberty. Now, therefore, we, the Mayor and City Council of the City of Alpharetta, Georgia, do recognize November 11th, 2021 as Veterans Day in the City of Alpharetta and encourage all citizens to observe and appreciate the sacrifices and contributions of our veterans who fought for peace and defended democracy on our land and abroad. Proclaim this first day of 2021. The second proclamation is a proclamation by the Mayor and Council of the City of Alpharetta, Georgia for National Native American Heritage Month. Whereas Native American Heritage Month began as an effort to gain a day of recognition for the contributions made by the first Americans and was expanded, resulting in the month of November being recognized as National Native American Heritage Month. And whereas the history and culture of our great nation has been significantly influenced by contributions the Native Americans made to the establishment and growth of the United States. And whereas it was the Native Americans who taught the settlers how to harvest their own crops and survive in the new country. Additionally, Native Americans have enhanced the freedom, prosperity, and greatness of America today. And whereas their rich culture, traditions, and history are respected and celebrated as part of a rich legacy throughout the United States. And whereas in honor of National Native American Heritage Month, community celebrations as well as cultural, artistic, educational, and historical activities have been planned. Now, therefore, we, the Mayor and City Council of Alpharetta, Georgia, do recognize National Native American Heritage Month and are grateful for the many contributions made to our great country. Next up on the agenda this evening is the consent agenda, and it consists of the council meeting minutes from the meeting of October 25th, 2021, as well as the financial management report for the month ending September 30th, 2021. Is there anyone who would like to remove anything from the consent agenda? Seeing none, I'll call for a motion.
Motion to approve. Second.
I have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell, a second by Councilman Burnett to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor, please vote yes, otherwise vote accordingly. And it does pass unanimously. So that'll wrap up the consent agenda, and we'll move on to the public hearing. First item under public hearing this evening is V-20-E-20-02, Midgard, self-storage variance and exception. Ms. Cook, you have the floor.
Mayor and Council, the next item is shown to you on the screen, and the item before you, V-2001-E-2002, Midgard Self-Storage Variance and Exception, was previously heard in August of 2020, and it's back before you because of an appeal to the Superior Court and your decision pursuant to the court order. There is no change to the previous application beyond what was previously discussed, except that the applicant has a proposed change to condition number 9 that they may present to you. So no other changes, but you may hear a change from the applicant. Thank you.
Do we have any questions from council? Seeing none, does the applicant like to come forward?
Mayor Gilvin, members of the council, I'm Don Rollator. My address is 200 Foothills Parkway, Marble Hill, Georgia, 30148. I'm here tonight on behalf of Midgard Storage Reliant, who was the applicant in this original application. We have had some discussions about comments to condition number 9, which dealt with the availability of vehicles for rent on the property. I want to take a minute to explain to you, as we have tendered a proposed settlement offer to the city attorney, and that offer is, with an understanding first, the applicant does not seek a full-service U-Haul facility. We don't want to do anything but provide a service for the people who will use this facility. Those people will live from city center to Avalon to anywhere within a reasonable area. The need and the demand for this kind of storage is extraordinary. Two things can happen. When you come to fill up a 10 by 10 space or a 10 by 20 space or a 10 by 24 space, mine and your SUV or sedan or crossover will not get the material there. It is generally delivered by box truck. That's what it takes to fill up a storage unit. There are two ways to get a box truck. You can go to a dealership or rental facility that sells those, and you can go off campus and get it. And you can go to your house and you can fill it up and you can bring it to the storage facility. Then you take it back to its home and then you go back to your house. Midgard is a very experienced creator and developer of climate-controlled storage space. They have found that that need is best served by having availability of about 4 trucks, rental vehicles on the property. It simplifies the process very much. You come there, you rent a space, take the truck to your house, fill it up, bring it back, put your stuff in the storage unit, leave the truck where it is, and go home. It couldn't be any simpler. And that day comes, some of us, hallelujah, when you empty the storage unit, which is not so common. You go to the facility in your car, you leave your car there, you get the truck, you take it to wherever it's going, you empty it, you bring the truck back there, and you take your car home. It's simply a customer service proposal. It is good because, number one, it doesn't increase traffic. Number two, it provides a convenience to citizens and property owners in the area. Number three, you can't see it from Georgia 400, and you can't see it from Old Milton Parkway. We have designed the location for these 4 trucks to be in an area where that can't be done. I'm going to let Steve Rowe show you that location.
Good evening. Steve Rowe with AEC 50 Warm Springs Circle. If you'll notice on the site plan in front of you, the lower left-hand corner where the parking spaces are screened by the building and the Georgia 400 buffer. 4 of those spaces would encumber the 4 trucks that were proposed in that area.
Those are in the V of the building.
In this, yes, in that.
Okay.
It's hard to know where to shoot it to. So, but yeah, it's in that lower section that faces the stream buffer. So those would be the areas that would be screened by the building from Old Milton Parkway and screened from Georgia 400 by the buffer that's required by the city.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
If you have questions, I'm happy to answer them. That is our presentation this evening, except for being able to respond to any questions that you might have, which we'll be happy to answer.
Any questions from council? Councilman Hypes?
Well, first of all, good evening, Mr. Rollator.
Good to see you, Mr. Hyde.
Nice to see you, sir. So I'm trying to understand, as this thing has come back around, if I was to go out and lease or rent one of these trucks, how would I go about doing that?
You would go to the franchisee that rented them in order to obtain one. If you came to Midgard, you could rent it on site at the desk where you rent the storage unit.
So there would be somebody at a desk. I take it inside the facility.
The same employees that operate the rental would lease you a truck.
And if I wanted to rent a truck and I would go inside the storage facility to a desk, would I pay for it there?
Yes. You would have your credit card handy, I assume, or your cash, and you would complete your transaction in the office.
And since that's a transaction, as you call it, with money, that'd be a commercial transaction.
You can call it anything you want to.
But I mean,
I don't know.
it's not a personal transaction. It's a business commercial transaction.
Well, in the same way that renting a storage space would be, yes, it is.
Now, if we were to allow commercial transactions in the storage unit, is there any intention of having a food kiosk or like a Subway shop in there?
No,
Or selling souvenirs or tchotchkes?
no.
Okay.
It'd be just like any other storage facility you go into. You can buy a padlock, you can buy a box, you can probably rent a hand truck. Those are necessities to that type of business. Other than that, there's no intention to operate any side business within the confines of the facility.
And I also understand that this is an application for a storage climate-controlled facility, correct?
That's correct.
And you've been studying this issue for a while, and you're familiar with the city's definition of that, correct?
I haven't looked at it in the last 2 hours, no.
Well, I've got it here in front of me. It says here from our municipal code 1.4 definitions, storage climate controlled, a facility consisting of a building or group of buildings that contain individual storage units of varying size in a climate controlled environment where customer access is through a lobby. That part's correct, right?
Sure, sounds good to me.
Okay. But it continues on with the conjunction, the word "and," which is part of the definition here. It says, and where no commercial transactions or activities take place other than the rental of the storage units. You would agree with me, a big box truck is not a storage unit, correct?
I agree that that's not a storage unit.
But this would be a commercial transaction for something other than a rental storage unit, correct?
No, I think it's incidental to the business of renting storage space.
But to be incidental is to be different, correct?
That's your vision.
I'm just asking.
No, I don't have an answer to that.
Okay. With regard to these parking spaces and the 4 trucks, I see that there's 28 spaces.
That's correct.
And so there'll be 28 lines laid out on the pavement where 28 cars up to 28 vehicles can
That's
park,
correct.
correct?
That's correct.
And with 4 trucks parked there, that will bring that down to 4 rental trucks. We'll make sure the lady gets this correct over here. 4 rental trucks, that would bring it down to 24 parking spaces for people who want to use it as a rental of storage units facility. Is that correct?
If you make that division, the requirement we worked on is that there be 28 parking spaces. There will be 28 parking spaces there.
Okay. And my question is, will there be a separate leasing of trucks business that has 4 trucks parked on 4 of the 28 spots? Yeah, yes or no? I'm not sure.
Yes, when they are there will be 4 trucks parked there.
Okay.
Commonly, you will have 1 to 2 trucks there because the other 2 will be in business. There's nothing to prevent a person from parking in those spaces while the trucks aren't there, but that's asking me to read a crystal ball. I can't tell you when they'll be there and when they won't.
Okay.
There's just the purpose is to provide the benefit to the customer.
So if I just live down Old Milton Parkway and I need to move from my apartment complex and to move to my house that I just bought in the great city of Alpharetta, I could go over to Midgard Storage and rent a truck?
Yes,
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
thank you.
I have a question along those lines. He was talking about parking the box trucks in those spaces. Are those 28 spaces drawn large enough to fit the box trucks?
Conceptual at this point, when created, they will be.
So they'll be large enough that every parking space or just 4
The
parking
4 truck
spaces?
parking spaces will be sized to accommodate trucks.
Okay. Councilman Burnett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Rollator, are the 4 box trucks counting against the 28, or are they in addition to?
No, they are part of it. There are 28 total spaces.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant?
For your consideration, the average facility in the city of Alpharetta has 7 total parking spaces. So we are at 4 times the necessity. By our own figures, we don't need that much, but that is a number that evolved during the hearing. So is there a risk of not being able to park our customers because we have 4 times the parking spaces any other facility in the area? No, sir. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Ms. Shapiro, do we have any public comment cards on this item?
We do not, sir.
But if there is anyone that would like to come forward and speak on this, now's your chance to do so. Seeing no one, we'll close public comment. Do I have a motion from council?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I will offer a motion to approve V-20-01/E-20-02 Midgard self-storage as to the request for height exception and parking variance due to and only due to the Superior Court's order on Midgard's appeal, subject to the proposed staff conditions, including condition number 9, which does not permit moving vehicle leasing on the site. Moving vehicle leasing will not be permitted on the site as it is not within the definition of climate control self-storage, and any request for a definitional variance as to climate control self-storage is denied.
I'll second that.
Have a motion by Councilwoman Richard and a second by Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll go ahead and call for a motion. Call for the vote. All those in favor of V-20-01 of denying V-
Yes.
I want to make sure to get this one right since we're getting it taken down. All those in favor of approving V-20-01/E-20-02 as to the request for height exception and parking variance due to and only due to the Superior Court order on Midgard's appeal, subject to the proposed staff conditions, including condition 9, number 9, which does not permit moving vehicle leasing on the site. Moving vehicle leasing will not be permitted on the site as it is not within the definition of climate-controlled self-storage, and any request for a definitional variance as to climate-controlled self-storage is denied. All those in favor of that motion, please vote yes. Otherwise, vote no. And it does pass 6-1. Second item under public hearing is E-21-05-3060 Kimball Bridge Road sign exception. Mr. Woodman, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The next item before you is a sign exception to reduce the setback for a monument sign from 10 feet to 2 feet. Have the location map on the overhead. The subject property is located at 3060 Kimball Bridge Road at the intersection of Kimball Bridge and Rock Mill Road. Subject property is zoned O&I and is developed with 2 low-rise office buildings. Surrounding properties are also zoned O&I to the north and west and special use to the south and east. New Prospect Elementary School is located to the south, Rock Mill Park to the east, and low-rise office buildings to the north and west. City just recently installed a roundabout at this location. This is just a street view before the roundabout of the office building with the former sign in the background. And a roundabout's just been recently installed at that location of Kimball Bridge and Rock Mill Road, which required additional right-of-way from the adjacent properties, including the applicant's property, which also included removal of the previous monument sign. The applicant is proposing to replace that monument sign within 2 feet of the property line along Kimball Bridge Road. And the existing parking lot limits the applicant's ability to meet that 10-foot setback. This is the monument sign that is proposed. And this is a visual provided by the applicant of the approximate location of the sign within 2 feet of the sidewalk. This represents you can see the installation of the roundabout in the background. This was shown to the public at the October 13th Community Zoning Information Meeting. There were no public comments on the item. And staff has reviewed the applicant's proposal and found that the request does not conflict with the established review criteria for sign exception. The request is directly related to the right-of-way taking for the new roundabout. If approved, conditions are recommended requiring that the monument sign cabinet not be internally illuminated, and that setback actually be 4 feet from the property line. Which will help with the scale of that sign and allow for a planting area around the base of the monument sign. With that, staff is recommending approval of this request subject to 2 conditions. 1, monument sign shall be permitted with a 4-foot setback from Kimball Bridge Road right-of-way as depicted on the submitted plan. 2, monument sign shall have a brick or stone base and sign cabinet shall not be internally illuminated. Decorative landscape beds shall be provided at the base of the monument sign with final approval by staff. Was able to speak to the applicant prior to the meeting beginning, and just the applicant had indicated that they were going to request a change to remove the requirement that the sign cabinet would not be internally illuminated. The applicant indicated to me that they would be okay with a backlit or halo lit on the monument sign, so just for your consideration. And that concludes the request. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer those.
Any questions from council on this item? Not seeing any, Michael. Thank you. Would the applicant like to come forward at this time?
Council, thank you for having us tonight and considering this exception to the setback and really just to the setback at this point. I understand there was concern about the lighting. I do actually agree with moving from the 2 to 4 foot setback. I think that's a good recommendation. We looked at it again. There's a fire hydrant that is, I'm sorry, I'm Patty Huxford with Option Signs. Sorry, a little nervous.
It's okay. If you don't mind, state your address, please.
165 Tidwell Road, Alpharetta. My bad. So the 4 foot setback, although it does present us with a little bit more challenge on the hill, a little bit bigger base to get the sign up to the road grade, the bottom of the sign up to the road grade, I think the client would be perfectly fine with that. The lighting situation, the 4 foot setback also helps us with a little bit. There's a fire hydrant that we're literally dealing with that is going to be straight on view in front of the sign. It is what it is. There was really nowhere else to put it. The lighting request evolves around, particularly this time of year. As you're coming out of that roundabout, the sign will sit back. You know, you're going this way and it sits over here. When you're coming from the other direction, it's very hard to see, if at all. And so the request for the lighting, it meets city code, it meets, the requirements of the height and size and everything of this meets the requirements of the city sign code, as does the lighting. At this point, I had worked with Brett closely about making sure the design met his requirements. So we are asking to allow it to continue to be internally illuminated. If we need to change that illumination in any way, we're certainly open to that.
Any questions from council? Councilwoman Richard.
Thank you. Regarding the internally lit, are you comfortable with the recommendation that Mr. Woodman made in regards to backlit or halo lit?
Sure, right now it is backlit. The panels are white, so, and the copy is backlit, black in the day, white at night. We could change that main copy maybe to halo lit, and then the panels to an opaque panel so that you don't see the panel. The panels are individual as part of the city requirement not to have one big piece of, panel. So we could make those opaque, so only the copy lights up would be an option.
So if we were to say backlit or halo lit, you would be comfortable with that? That's what I'm trying to gather. Great, okay.
It is actually currently backlit, shown now in the drawings.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions from council? Seeing none? Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Ms. Shapiro, do we have any public comment cards on this item?
We do not, sir.
But if anybody would like to come forward and speak on this sign exception, now is your chance. Seeing none, we'll close public comment. You'll have a motion from council.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'll offer a motion to approve E-21-05-3060 Kimball Bridge Road sign exception, subject to the condition number 1 as read by Mr. Woodman. Condition number 2, in the first sentence, I am making a change to read, monument sign shall have a brick or stone base and shall be backlit or halo lit, period. And then the second sentence continues, decorative landscape bed shall be provided at the base of the monument sign with final approval by staff.
I have a motion by Councilwoman Richard and a second by Councilman Merkel. In discussion. All those in favor of approval of E-21-05-3060 Kimball Bridge Road sign exception with the conditions as outlined by Councilwoman Richard, please vote yes. Otherwise, vote accordingly. And it does pass unanimously. Third and final item under public hearing this evening will be PH-21-19 Lewis Manning House / 40 Cumming Street change to conditions of zoning. Mr. Woodman, you have the floor.
Thank you again, Mayor and Council. The item before you is a change to conditions of zoning to allow the Lewis Manning House to be used as a private residence. The property is located at 40 Cumming Street, east of the intersection at Cumming Street and North Main Street. Property is 0.837 acres. It's a historic property rezoned in 2017 to downtown live work, and that was done in conjunction with the 11-acre Taylor Morrison development to the north and east of this property. Zoning at that time allowed a condition allowing for the use of the Lewis Manning House for an office or for HOA use. The surrounding Taylor Morrison development was approved for 58 single-family detached homes, known as Manning on the Square. And then a year later, in 2018, the Lewis Manning House was designated as required, designated historic as required by conditions associated with the Taylor Morrison development. Previous conditions, well, this is the site plan. Previous conditions of zoning required that the Lewis Manning House yard be made available for use by residents of the Manning on the Square subdivision, not for the public, but as an amenity space for residents of the subdivision. The downtown code states that the site's open space requirements shall be considered completely satisfied when you save a historic home on the city's contributing historic list. Therefore, no open space was actually required for the subdivision. However, the site plan at that time did show about 14.6% civic space and 10.5% amenity space within that development that also covered this particular property. That total came to 25.1% open space, or just under 3 acres. The Lewis Manning House property, which we see here on this exhibit, it actually represents just a little over a half of an acre of amenity space, which, if that was removed from the overall development, would bring the subdivision total open space down to 2.38 acres, or 21.9%, almost 22%. The zoning of the subdivision, which is DTR, downtown residential, requires a minimum 10% amenity space and 10% civic space for a total of 20%. So if the historic building was not saved on this property, they would still meet the 20% requirement for open space on this property. This item was shown to the, well, I have a couple exhibits before we get to that. The applicant is the proposed purchaser of this property. They would like to, as I mentioned, like to use this as a private residence. They are proposing an addition to the rear of the historic home. Of course, that addition would need to be approved by the Historic Preservation Commission. And the purpose of this addition is to provide for a garage attached to the home. Over here, we have a swimming pool, as well as 2 cabanas associated with the swimming pool. We are showing trees here, but there were previous conditions of zoning required that these trees remain, and so we wanted to determine the total impact to these trees, which is what you see calculated below. This is the structural root plate impacts, which you see are all 0. And then this is the critical root zone impacts here, which the city arborist has reviewed this and feels comfortable that the trees would survive given these impacts. The applicant also provided some scale drawings. So these are not detailed drawings of what the addition would look like to the home. So this is looking at the rear of the home. This would be the Lewis Manning house right here. And this is the proposed addition for the garage, as you see coming in here. It's a 1-story addition. The gable of the roof of this 1-story addition does reach to the top of the 2nd floor of the existing Manning house, but it is a 1-story addition. The pool sits behind these trees here. This is a view of the house from the entrance to the Manning on the Square subdivision. So this is Cumming Street, and this is the house. You can see the proposed addition in the back. And this is just an example of a cabana. It is not meant that the applicant provided. This is not meant to show that this is supposed to look like the architecture of the historic Manning house. This is just a typical what the cabana and pool might look like. And this is from the 2017 exhibits provided with the Taylor Morrison and Lewis Manning home rezoning of those properties. And what you see here in green represents civic space. The yellow areas represent amenity space. And staff has reviewed the applicant's proposal and finds that it can generally support the requests. The use of the Lewis Manning house as a private residence would generate fewer vehicular trips than a business use would, having less impact to the traffic on Cumming Street. We hear a lot about how Cumming Street backs up at this location, as well as less impacts to other nearby streets. In addition, the Manning on the Square subdivision would still comply with the minimum open space requirement of 20%. If approved, we are recommending conditions that would require the Historic Preservation Commission approval of a certificate of appropriateness. That is a public hearing process whereby a designated historic property, if they wanted to change the exterior, add an addition to the property, or add things such as the cabanas to the property, that the Historic Preservation Commission would ensure that those additions would meet the architectural integrity of the existing home. With that, staff is recommending approval, subject to the following conditions. And I'm going to start off with the conditions associated with file number CLUP 1702/Z1704, Taylor Morrison, 40 Cumming Street. 2, the Lewis Manning House property consisting of approximately .837 acres shall be zoned DT-LW and developed substantially similar to the site plan prepared by D. Tracy Ward, dated 9/8/2021. Except for modifications required to comply with the conditions below, use shall be restricted to a private single-family residence. So we just changed the former site plans that were referenced in that condition to the latest site plan, as well as the change in use. Condition 10 would be struck in its entirety. That condition previously stated an easement shall be recorded on the final plat providing for the use of the Lewis Manning House yard as depicted on the site plan. And that site plan at the time depicted it as amenity space. So that would be stricken. Condition 11, the yard surrounding the Lewis Manning House shall be enhanced with landscape, hardscape, and proposed to be stricken would be seating areas and a sculpture or fountain. As approved by staff, enhanced plantings and or understory trees shall be required along the north and east sides of the Lewis Manning House. And then a new sentence is recommended that states, developer of the Manning on the Square subdivision shall provide a sculpture or fountain in civic space to the east side of the entrance of the subdivision as approved by staff. So in this area, instead of having it within the Lewis Manning House yard, that sculpture would be developed in this civic space along Cumming Street. Condition 12, developer shall provide a statement on the final plat and in a binding legal agreement providing for the protection and striking and maintenance of the Lewis Manning House. Further, the Lewis Manning House shall be designated as a historic structure under the city's historic preservation ordinance. Striking maintenance there is the developer's responsibility to revise that final plat. Developer does not want to continue to be strapped with that maintenance. The protection is still there. The house has been designated still, and the property maintenance code, of course, would apply to the private residence. Condition 13, striking the first sentence, which states the Lewis Manning House shall be permitted one monument sign not to exceed 10 square feet and one wall sign not to exceed 4 square feet, both to be approved by DRB. If this was no longer an office use, they would not have a need for signage. But keeping the last sentence, which reads, the property will forever be known as the Lewis Manning House and will be designated by a plaque which will be affixed to the exterior of the structure as approved by DRB. And then we recommend new conditions on the current request before you. Condition 1, exterior modifications and additions to the historic structure, accessory structures, and walls and fencing shall be consistent with the architectural style of the Lewis Manning House, subject to review by the city's downtown consultant, and approval of a certificate of appropriateness by the Historic Preservation Commission. 2, swimming pool and cabanas shall be located to have the least impact to existing trees. This may result in a reduction in the swimming pool and cabana footprints. Critical root zone impacts to trees shall not exceed the impacts listed on the site plan prepared by D. Tracy Ward dated 9/8/2021 with final approval by staff. Cabana shall not exceed a height of 16 feet and shall be screened from view of the public right-of-way. 3, the proposed addition to the Lewis Manning House shall not exceed the height depicted on the submitted conceptual images. 4, the Lewis Manning House yard shall be developed with a park-like setting, including decorative plant selections promoting the historic district. A landscape plan shall be subject to approval by the Design Review Board. 5, prior to the certificate of occupancy associated with prior to a certificate of occupancy associated with the Manning on the Square subdivision and Lewis Manning House property, the Manning on the Square final plat shall be updated to reflect the above changes, including but not limited to A statement that the Lewis Manning House shall be used as a private residence, amending open space areas, providing access for the Lewis Manning House, and reflecting any necessary revisions to the declarations and covenants. In Condition 6, conditions of zoning related to CLUP 1702/Z1704 Taylor Morrison /40 Cumming Street shall remain in effect unless superseded by the conditions above. Changes to the conditions above shall not release the developer of Manning on the Square from conditions such as addressing the Cumming Street streetscape, providing civic space along Cumming Street, and path connection through the site. The path connection through the site, there's a condition connecting this civic space up here to the civic space along Cumming Street. Previously, there were plans to bring it along this side, which would go through the Lewis Manning House yard. They can make that path connection through this proposed sidewalk here on the east side of their main drive. And that concludes the presentation. If you have questions, I'm happy to answer those.
Thank you, sir. Any questions from council? Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Michael. The number one, I'm surprised that the detailed architectural drawings were not presented to council, but they would have to be presented to the Historic Preservation Commission, right?
They would, yes.
In detail,
Yes.
outlining what they, okay, so there's no need to include that in one of the conditions?
No, the Historic Preservation Incentive Zoning Ordinance addresses that with the Certificate of Appropriateness. It specifies what has to be submitted.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Councilman Binder, then Councilman Hydes.
Maybe zooming in may help you not, but that area before the Manning House was an amenity area, right?
Correct.
So is there still going to be an amenity area facing Cumming on that? What's yellow right now, is that the entire property of the Manning House?
This yellow amenity area, which represents the Lewis Manning House property, would no longer be amenity area for the rest of this, for this subdivision. That would go away. It's about a half an acre, but they would still meet their minimum amenity space and civic space, even if it was removed.
When we look at these applications, we look up the kind of how the amenity space is spaced out between the different blocks of the housing and everything. So it does seem to change that up quite a bit.
Yeah, I don't disagree that there's a removal of amenity space here. I would say that the applicants at the time that this was prepared in 2017 probably didn't give themselves justice by showing all the other amenity space that would qualify here. Yards qualify for amenity area as well, but you're correct, it would reduce it by about a half acre.
Is there any consideration just from the city that we keep this trail that would go to Cumming Street as an amenity space?
Are you referring to this area? We hadn't looked at that just because they were still meeting. They've saved the historic house. They technically didn't even need to meet open space. I know that there was a larger development associated with that, but they were still meeting the minimum required. Mm-hmm. And this area will become additional civic space, which civic is also open to these residents as well as the public. So there will be some increase to civic space by meeting one of the previous conditions requiring this connection here.
So we have this development that's across the street from us on Academy that had a historic house that was part of a bigger development, and they got sectioned off, and then this one too. How many more do we have? Just off the top of the head, and you can give it to me.
I don't know off the top of my head how many
that are part of a bigger development.
Yeah, that's well, we had the Ben Manning house behind us, or behind you, at the east of Maine subdivision. That also went through a similar process. It was rezoned, and they actually came back and rezoned the Ben Manning house to allow it to be used for an office use. Mm-hmm. I know that we had the Hudson Park development that came through for zoning not too long ago. That had the historic Weatherford house on it. I believe the conditions of that, on that one allowed for it to be used for private residence, office, or HOA use. I can't think of right off the top of my head any other historic properties that are part of a larger land that could potentially come forward. I'm sure that we may have some.
Come back. It's just the precedent of approving the bigger application with this part of it, and then coming back and rechanging it. Is not something I prefer. But I guess the good news is that, you know, we saved one of our historic structures.
Councilman Hypes.
Mr. Woodman, you might have addressed this, but was there any public comment prior to whatever happens here today? I'm aware of one person, and I want to talk about that one, but are you aware of any others?
There was one letter of objection. I'm glad that you brought that up. I forgot to mention that during the presentation. We did receive one letter of objection from a resident on Manning Drive. They had some concerns about the property being used for a private residence, that area would go away for public use. As I mentioned, it was on the original application as amenity space, so it wasn't for public use. It was for use of just the neighborhood. But the open space, technically, yes, it would go away. That was the primary objection in that letter. I have not received any others.
Yeah, and I'm familiar with that letter, and I think you fairly expressed the sentiment of that person about, you know, when the project was presented, this would be amenity / civic space close to Cumming Street. An unrelated question, in this original recommendation number 9 about the certificate of occupancy in the original, says the exterior shall be restored prior to the first certificate of occupancy on the property for the subdivision. Has that occurred? Did they do the exterior restoration to?
I've not been by the property and personally seen with my own eyes, but it's my understanding that they've made some exterior changes to the home. That wouldn't include anything proposed by this current applicant.
I'll ask it differently.
Okay.
If the property is sold to a private individual to use it as a house and it's no longer under the control of the developer of the subdivision, how does that requirement get satisfied?
The property owner would be subject to getting a certificate of appropriateness to make any changes, whether it's to the exterior of the existing home, additions. Is that addressing your question?
Yes, but I do recall the discussion with Taylor Morrison. Yeah. And both Planning Commission and I recall council discussion. And rather than having the certificate of occupancy or restoration of that house halfway through the issuance of certificates of occupancy to the subdivision, it was put on the front end. That, you know, some degree of restoration of the house. And my question is, has that been satisfied?
I believe so, but the applicants are here, including someone from Taylor Morrison.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell says he may be able to answer your question.
I live right near there, as you know. It has been beautifully restored on the exterior. The occupant, whoever occupies it, will then go and restore the interior as they desire, but the outside is nicely landscaped and restored.
Okay.
So,
thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions from council? Mayor Pro Tem?
I can't think of one more. Michael, in our ordinance, we don't give preferential treatment to whether or not it's a residence or a office, but why do we require that the developer let us know in advance? Is that because of code? Whether it's going to be a business or a simply clubhouse or whatever?
I don't know that there was any requirement other than if there was a business there, they would have to get a business license If they intended to use it for a HOA use, any kind of interior improvements may have been subjected to a different section of the building code. And the fire marshal may have looked at it a little bit differently than business as well.
Okay, but either way, a residence is much less dense and less traffic.
Sure, as a residence, it would generate less traffic there. You know, if it's a business, we have no idea what office that might be. It could be a variety of different professional offices, whoever that might be. And of course, they would get signage associated with that, and you don't know what that signage would say. So there's a benefit to that as well.
Sure. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions from council? Thank you, sir. Ms. Shapiro, do we have the applicant present? If the applicant would like to come forward at this time, please do so.
Evening. How's everyone doing? My name is Jeremy Cady. I have an office at 8000 Avalon Boulevard. I'm a real estate agent with Compass, and I'm representing my brother, who is my client. It sounds kind of weird, but that's what's going on. Just a couple quick things. I'll keep this brief because I know everyone wants to get some rest before the Braves game tomorrow night. I developed a pretty close working relationship with the people that were listing the property several months ago. And a lot of the applicants, a lot of the people that were looking at the property were kind of saying the same things that Michael was saying. You know, there was a lot of commercial offers. There was a lot of people that wanted to put large signage outside. There was talk of handicap parking, lots of traffic in and out. And so when our offer came together back in July to purchase it as a residence, we of course didn't have any idea of the process we were going to have to start to go through, which this has been amazing. But it kind of came as a breath of fresh air because everyone agreed that it felt like a residence would probably preserve what the Manning house is as it is. It's a beautiful property. Of course, the inside is not inhabitable at all. There's great structure changes, and you know, there's mold and there's things that we got to handle on the inside of the house. But our family loves Alpharetta. My brother and I have been here since 2011. We talk frequently how much we love Alpharetta. Our family business is located right on Westside Parkway. We photograph high school seniors through most of the state of Georgia, so you probably have heard that name before. So I don't know if there's been any families that have senior portraits. But we love Alpharetta. It is home. And one thing to clarify, this is absolutely not an investment. It's not a flip. My brother and his new wife are going to live there forever. I have to calm him down daily of how excited he is about the potential of preserving this property. And he's got a lot of history from purchasing buildings in Florida on the historic registry. He's gone through a lot of those things. He kind of has a knack for that. And I think the word that we keep just kicking around is we want to enhance what's there. I mean, the property is amazing. It's gorgeous. It has such a feel to it. So there's going to be a lot of, obviously, architectural plans that Tracy Ward is working on that is going to come before the city. I'm sure that journey is going to be long and laborious, but we're ready for that process. Bottom line, they want to enhance it. You know, we recognize, like we said, that it being a residence is probably going to be an amazing thing for the local community. And he's very highly qualified to make that property amazing. I grew up in Florida next to him, and, you know, a weed should not have grown in his yard. I mean, when it happened, he was out there to pick it. He's maintained it highly. So we're excited about what could potentially happen, and we'd love to address any questions, but there's my brief synopsis of what's hopefully going to take place.
Does council have any questions for the applicant? Councilwoman Richard.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Michael reviewed a number of conditions. I just wanted to hear from you if you're in agreement with the conditions.
100%.
Thank you.
Any other questions from council for the applicant? Seeing none? Thank you, sir.
Have a good night.
Thank you. Ms. Shapiro, do we have any public comment cards now?
We do not, sir.
But if anyone would like to come forward and speak on this item, now's your chance. Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Do I have a motion from council?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'll offer a motion to approve PH-21-19 Lewis Manning House /40 Cummings Street, subject to the conditions as reviewed by Mr. Woodman.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilwoman Richard to approve PH-21-19 Lewis Manning House /40 Cummings Street, change to conditions of zoning, and a second by Councilman Burnett. Any discussion? Councilman Binder.
Just before the vote, I honestly have no problem with changing it to for sale residence. It's just when we see these applications, we get impressed and it goes above and beyond the standards sometimes, and then understand reality happens and you've got to backtrack. But I do think we should look at them to not just say that they're within the standard staff, and that we look at it and say, how does it fit into the feel of the application that we approved previously? I'm going to start over again. So when we look at these applications and they come back, they should have the look and feel to it. And this one, it still does, but it takes a lot away from the frontage and the loop there, or I call everything now the trail, the loop, but trail's there. So when they do come up, I understand changes happen, but it still has to have the look and feel that we had on the application. And this one doesn't for me. So, and maybe when we see the future applications for when they have historic as part of it, we know if they're going to section it off, what that's going to be when we approve it the first time, because this seems to be happening more often. And I think it may be a precedent set that they hook us with being part of the application, and then they come back later. But I do think it'll be great that it is a resident.
Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell.
I'm excited about this. I think as we were developing the list for historic preservation, that one of the best things we saw is happening was for a private homeowner to come in and carefully restore the home to its original intent. And we didn't put restrictions on it as far as it could be modern on the inside, as long as the exterior remained constant in our community. So I'm excited about this happening, and I think it helps it to have a family living in the house where it's living and breathing, and that'll keep it good in perpetuity. So thank you all for being willing to do that.
Any other comments from council? All those in favor of the motion, please vote yes. Otherwise, vote accordingly. And it does pass 6-1. Congratulations. On my agenda, it says old business, but I see no items. I thought I'd just make sure there's no business items under old business before we move on.
Mr. Mayor, technically, the second reading of tonight's ordinance should be under old business. That was an oversight.
Okay. So I should go ahead and address that now, although it's not in that order in the agenda. Thank you for clarifying. So we'll do a little housekeeping and move item B from the new business portion of tonight's agenda to item A under the old business portion of tonight's agenda, and that will be the approval of fiscal year 2022 mid-year budget amendment, personnel compensation. This is the second reading. Mr. Regas, Mr. Harris, and Chris Randall.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Before you is the second reading of the 2022 mid-year budget amendment. There have been no changes to the budget amendment, nor to the recommendations to the staffing positions, which you may recall were 6, and the personnel salary adjustments therein. So there's no changes, but if there's any questions.
Councilman Burnett.
Sorry, I wasn't in attendance last week, so you guys can take a demerit from me. Tom, what is the total dollar value associated out of the annual budget towards this initiative with our Department of Public Safety?
There's 3 things of tonight, so I just want to make sure there was a compensation adjustment.
Of what?
Of 3% across the board to all personnel, 10% additionally to police.
Can you tell me the total dollar value of what that is?
The full value of the annualized value of that, what I just mentioned, is in the general fund about $1.9 million.
Okay.
And then another, let me try to make sure, $216,000 in E911.
So it's roughly 2.2
Correct.
million total.
Right.
When you guys ran this study, how did you come up with where and how you would allocate? And I'll preface that with a statement. I know in my time on this council, one of the issues that our 911 team has seen is I can only imagine that the stresses on that job are unbelievable. But can you talk about how long we have operated at a deficit, and does that precede me in headcount? That may be a Bob question.
Councilman Burnett, I believe that the entire time I've been here, we've struggled with recruiting and retaining 911 operators.
Do you know what, is that an industry-wide initiative? Because if I know 1,000 people, I know 0 people that work in that profession. Can you detail the recruitment process or how that, what the background of those people are that want to pursue that avenue? Because I think it's an opportunity for people to hear us if they're interested in that sort of workforce.
Right. And Chris might be able to help with this, Councilman, but it's attractive to a lot of people. But when they get in there and get trained and at the desk itself, it's just stressful. And it's and when they weigh the pros and the cons of that stress to their, I think, pay, it's not worth it.
So I'll move on from there. If you look at the 2.2 million, and I look at the spreadsheet that I got last night with respect to the current matrix among police, how some cities like Brookhaven don't have fire. I would guess that's a DeKalb County covered service. That's just a WAG. But when I look at some of the positions that we have within our Department of Public Safety on the police side, I see that there's a I don't dispute giving pay raises. I do have questions. Some of our positions, especially as you move up rank and file, they look to be relatively competitive, if not better than the cities that we are competing against. Do you three have anything to say with respect to that?
So in 2019, so when you look at the spreadsheet that you're looking at, we have the grades.
Excuse me, do you have it so we could post it for those in the public that are watching?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. I'm glad you brought it up, but I just wanted to make sure the people that aren't able to see the document would be a little bit confused.
All right, so this shows per position compared to Alpharetta in position in sworn police and fire only. But I wanted to let you know when we did this study included every single position. We want to make sure that when we did the market analysis, and when all of this started was because of the rate of inflation has been astronomical. And we see it all over the news, a lot of organizations giving pay increases across the board. So one of the reasons is most of those organizations, as you can see also in the spreadsheet, their fiscal year starts on October 1st. So it's no coincidence that everybody starts seeing having press releases about their rates. And then that's how all of this started. So we start looking at what is happening in the market. Another thing that you can see over the news is police sworn, not entire police departments, sworn, what I call badges and guns, are getting an additional pay increase. So we start looking at down deep to make sure we are still comparable to the market. The 3% cost of living increase is to fill the gap with the inflation that has been growing from 2.4%, and the last time we saw is 5.4%. And then we went to the other positions. We went to all other positions, and what we saw was that increase in police officers and police supervisors. 911, it's an initiative that we already had in the works, and we packaged everything included, because as you can see, our attrition rate, for every 20 people we hire, we manage to keep one. And to some of the questions about our staffing, we have been fully staffed for 1 week for the past 8 years in 911. And the position, well, it is already a hard position to fill anywhere in the country. Now, right now, it's even worse because we are having difficulty recruiting any position. And so that problem with the communications officers is just exacerbated the issue. So, and when we start looking into more granular, all right, what about police compared to fire jobs? What has been happening is a shift in the demands of the work. There used to be a parity, and now it changed. Right after 9/11, it was the opposite. And things changed over time, and we are competing with the same short amount of talent pool for the same position. All municipalities around us. It's just one pool of applicants, and we all want them. One thing that was also something that started in 2019 was the phase 1 of the pay for public safety and sworn positions. What was developed steps within the ranges. So when you see that the ranges are above, so by 40%, that is not the pay range, is the step within the ranges, because we had to address compression. Now, if you provide, and as you can see, there is, even with our pay matrix, let me go on the other side. Even with our pay matrix, here, currently, we are minus 3% on the average of all the other organizations based on the minimum pay, okay? Now, when we change to the 13% proposed, it's a snowball effect. If you only give 13% to police officers, then now they're going to be making the same as the sergeants, and so on and so forth. And that's what we have to adjust, the pay within the ranges. Now, when you look at the grade proposed, and those are the numbers you see, the 10, the 33, 14, 40, even for police sergeant, we are still a little bit less. For police lieutenant, we are still a little bit less. But that, if this is for the minimum pay, but not for the current folks that are already into the ranges. Does that answer your question?
I am sure it did.
I can confuse you even further if you would like.
I've had enough conversations with you. Well, one of the things that I think is, you guys bring recommendations, and I think that by and large, in everything that I have seen in 4 years, we are very supportive. If it's a compensation study, if it's a cost of living adjustment, if it's merit raises, as times have, improved over the last couple of years. I know I've worked on you with Councilman Merkel to make sure that we treat people equitably. And I live and go to bed at night and believe that we do and we have. And my questions aren't necessarily that, but when I get an email on Friday about, and I also don't dispute, it is politically very difficult to wander into a career in law enforcement right now, but it's difficult to wander into a career in local government. I don't think that those things are disparate. They are to a certain degree, but you don't see, it's hard to attract people. I've been around long enough to know that when times are good, people aren't running into City Hall to get a job. But when I look at the email that was received Friday, and you see that 28 officers have left, or some of those, 7 of them are due to leaving the profession, 6 retired, and 8 were involuntarily terminated or resigned. Well, that number gets to be a lot smaller relatively quickly, and my fear, I'm not going to sit here and ever vote against the police. I'm a dyed-in-the-wool Republican, and there are things that we don't do. But that doesn't mean that I'm immune from asking thoughtful questions, because if the industry in law enforcement in general is a zero-sum game of applicants, we're a well-to-do place to live. And I hate to sound like a greater good person, but it is a very real thing that if we take somebody from somewhere else, then what are they going to do? And eventually it becomes into another argument of haves and have-nots, and I fully accept the responsibility to protect the people that live here and pay and staff accordingly, but I live with the thought of how many places are out there that can't do what we're doing. I just really wanted to know in a wildly transparent way. It does, when you look down, it does look like, the fire, the 8 of the 15 that left to pursue an outside interest, and from 2019, to me, neither of those statistics, police or fire, are overly glaring. People decide that they don't like doing what they want to do. I don't think there's anything we can do as a council to change somebody that feels a different calling on their life vocationally. I'm very sympathetic to your, what you're after, and we carried over $12 million, and we can afford to do these things, but do you guys, as a group, firmly believe that this is the right thing to do from an equity perspective, or should this council turn over $2.2 million to you and say, you go fix it? Because I see a lot of supporters in this room that I don't imagine they're here because they're happy. And I don't want to ignore the elephant in the room, and I want to make sure that we truly are doing the right thing, and that I don't believe anybody up here is a zero-sum game, like we like them, we don't like them. But would you rather skin the cat with giving you guys the $2.2 million and working that way and letting you be the staff? Because I feel like this puts this group in a very precarious position, because I don't want to walk into a fire station and not be liked or feel like we didn't do the right thing, because that's not right either.
First shot. When when I wrote y'all in October, that was my recommendation to you, the 3 parts: to fund unfunded positions due to the pandemic, the 3% across the board raise, and in the market, and from the market and net analysis to increase police and 911 by 10%. It's less actually than what some communities are doing, and to me, that number was going to be, the monetary number was going to be what the monetary number was going to be. Now, based on good fund balances and additional revenue being anticipated for this year, this fits in that. But we really feel that we'll be able to recruit and retain better with this recommendation to you.
I will yield back, Mayor. Thank you.
Councilman Hypes.
Partly in response to Councilman Burnett, and partly back to the staff. First, as a staff, I appreciate the detail and seriousness to which you guys have brought this information forward. I appreciate the fact that council had the foresight to hire Director Harrelson over here to enable us to have this information, because we would have been operating blind without this type of HR information from other jurisdictions. And I see it a little bit differently. I appreciate the information you've given us. You all make recommendations. You provide data. I view, I'll speak for myself, I view my role up here as one of setting priorities and budget priorities. And if you come to me and tell me that Sandy Springs or another jurisdiction has the ability to take away and hire away our valued officers, police officers, and that to be competitive on a market rate study, this is what we need to do, then it's in my court to look at the budget as a whole and to look at compensation for every employee who's employed by the city of Alpharetta, every single one of them. Some of us are in the same departments, but we all work for the city of Alpharetta. So we got to make decisions and set priorities based on available money of how we're going to allocate that. And for me, this is a market-driven study. What we've had the benefit of having that maybe the public hasn't is a spreadsheet that has laid out for us the details of what surrounding jurisdictions are doing with respect to various personnel and public safety. And when it comes time to vote on this matter, I'm prepared to vote the priorities on the budget based on market-driven data, and I want to express my appreciation for you guys for bringing the data forward.
Councilman Merkel, do you have a question for staff?
No, we're going back to save that comment.
Do we have any other questions for staff? So just to clarify, this is a staff-driven recommendation by the man qualified who's been running this city for 2 decades, by Director Harris, who's been in this position for a very long time and done an excellent job, and by Director Chris, excuse me, who has put in a tremendous amount of time. Do y'all have any reservations about what you're bringing forward?
No, sir.
Okay.
Just want to make one little comment.
Sure.
Every time we are tasked to make decisions, no decisions are easier. And that's why we always take any emotion or any arbitrary rationale. If it was the other way around, we would be here the same way. Should the conditions change, we will come back. And that's what I can offer.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate all you've done. If there's no other questions from council, y'all can sit down. Do we have any public comment cards?
We do, sir. The first speaker this evening for this item is Mr. Matthew Mullen. If you'd like to come forward down to the podium, state your first and last name and your address for the record, we would appreciate that.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Matthew Mullen. I live at 1130 Arbor Hill Lane. For several years now, I've been a volunteer firefighter with the city of Alpharetta. In that time, I've worked a bunch of structure fires, car wrecks, ran lots of medical calls. I've seen a lot of tragedy. But I'm not here today to represent the department or the brave men and women that serve on it. I am here today to speak on behalf of the citizens of this city. They deserve the best, not good enough, okay, or meets the minimum requirements. Over my 10 years of service, we have seen less and less people show up to applicant testing, and good firemen have left the service altogether. Compensation is a part of that. And when we have less candidates to choose from, it makes it impossible to hire the very best. I don't pretend to know all the answers here, but what I do know is if we choose to come together and start to lead, we can fix this problem and give the citizens of this city what they deserve, not just now, but 5, 10, 15 years from now. I know you have to vote in a minute, and it may be too late to change the events of today, but that's okay. There's another opportunity tomorrow. Thank you.
Were there any other public comment, Claude?
No, sir, there is not.
Okay, thank you. We'll close public comment. Do I have a motion from we do have a resolution. My apologies. Mr. Stacy.
An ordinance of the mayor and council of the city of Alpharetta, Georgia, to adopt a mid-year fiscal 2022 budget for certain funds of the city of Alpharetta, Georgia, appropriating the amounts shown in each budget as expenditures, adopting the item of revenue anticipation, prohibiting expenditures to exceed appropriations, and prohibiting expenditures to exceed actual funding available.
Thanks, sir. Do I have a motion from council?
Yes, sir. I move to approve the fiscal year 2022 mid-year budget amendment as read by City Attorney Mike Stacy.
Have a motion by Councilman Binder to approve the mid-year budget amendment, and a second by Councilman Hypes. Any discussion?
Excuse me, didn't ask, is there anybody else that would like to speak like you did on all of the other ones? Like to speak?
This is the second reading of a resolution, or, right. The second reading doesn't require any public comment at all. I figured if someone had already submitted something. If you'd like to speak, Alderman, yes, please.
My name's Kirk Mundy. I live at 11128 Gray Owl Road. I became interested in this topic when I saw that Public Safety Department is shown as a cohesive unit. The awards I saw earlier tonight were to the Public Safety Department, not to any individual arm. When I saw that there were going to be different raises, and in last week's meeting, I watched the video, I wasn't here, that it was just accepted that there would be a morale hit for the firefighters who were getting 10% less raise. That goes against the cohesive department, but I think it has something else to do as well. We talked about market-driven things, we talk about recruiting, we talk about people leaving for various reasons. We always need to get people. The vast majority of recent hires of firefighters have been from Gwinnett and Hall counties, where one county has had a double-digit percentage raise. One has added a $10,000 kicker for certified paramedics. When we send a signal out, regardless of what the level of the salary is, we send a signal out that you're perhaps not as important member of the unified team as we say. When it comes time to recruit again, I think one of the reasons that we win these awards, we have the ISO top rating, is because we're able to hire experienced firefighters. We're not taking brand new firefighters. If we lose our ability to recruit when we do have openings, because of the actions here, that I know it's optics, but optics are important. And I think it's important that I'm not saying to take away from the 911 or from police. I think there needs to be an increase also for the firefighters. In my career, I've managed budgets that are crossed functions.
We generally limit public comments to about 3 minutes.
Okay. Just one last thing. And when the priorities of the organization take precedent, there's no silos. All right? There's no silos. And I'll just throw up one silo. I drive by the corner of Waters Road and Kimball Bridge Road 4 or 5 times a week. I understand there's a micro park, which I'm not sure what a micro park is. I assume it's a very small park that's very expensive to build. I think those are the kind of things that should be considered in this overall city view, not just within the budget for these raises. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So we have a motion and we have a second. Is there any discussion? Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. I had asked you all last week to look at the data. I was very much concerned and still am about the morale and the perception of this, because we say that our firefighters and our policemen and our 911 dispatchers are all one. They're all in one department. John, you certainly tell them that, but yet in this case, I asked for the data, and you came back, and the data is is hard to argue with when we're already paying our firefighters more than Milton, more than Marietta, and more than Roswell, and we don't have the data on Sandy Springs, as I recall. I would love to be able to afford to give this raise to our firefighters. I think everybody up here would. But what I want to say is I want you, if that data changes, please come back immediately to us if you see the retention or attrition or anything like that changing, or the pay grade difference in Sandy Springs or any one of these cities. We need to know immediately, please. Thank you.
Councilman Binder.
Just a couple of things. I don't think any of us just took it away, saying that we would accept the morale issue. Anytime up here, we're very concerned about all our employees, and yes, we are. And what I will say is the person that did the first statement, I completely agree with you. What we're doing today does not preclude us doing something for tomorrow. And I felt very comfortable with the data that y'all brought forward for an environment where we're seeing inflation, the environment where we're seeing within those job categories, and the market's moving. And I appreciate you, Director Randall, saying that you're going to bring the same set of urgency for when you see it moving forward. And that's what we're going to do for everything with this environment that we have for all wages. You're seeing the story play out across all industries. So it's not an easy decision for us on that one, but it makes sense. And this is not. I feel comfortable moving forward on this one because it does not preclude us for future action.
Councilman Markle.
This has been kicked around for quite a while now. The basis of this came to us. We didn't go looking for this. It came to us because we were faced with a constant barrage of defund the police, district attorneys that weren't backing their own people, policing, and I've talked to several of them, and I've got friends in law enforcement. In the last 2 to 5 years, it's changed so much compared to where it was 10 years ago. It's changed in the last 12 months. The constant barrage of cell phones. I watched somebody get handcuffed on Mansell Road, and 2 cars pulled over, just stopped on Mansell, turned their flashes on, and got out to videotape what was not a big deal, just somebody was being apprehended and they weren't resisting. But that's where it's gotten to. And so with that, you start talking to, as my wife has, the wives of some of the law enforcement people, they want them out. They just flat out have told her, say, look, I'm trying to convince them to do something else. Those things become hard, and that becomes an emergency in our minds as a city that we can't just sit back and wait until the end of the year and see what happens, because we already saw what happened. We are still seeing what's happening. And it's not just us, it's other municipalities. So it is imperative that we as a council address these issues. We asked Bob to address it. He did it in conjunction with delayed raises. We have the money, and it's been set up here multiple times. This isn't over. This doesn't mean we can't start another study tomorrow. We can't do new comparisons. This is not excluding anybody. This is including a percentage of the department that's having issues. And we have come up with a solution using 3 top-of-the-line professionals running the city between HR and Bob and Tom Harris. So I'm comfortable with the decision that's been made, where I stand in this decision. I'll walk into a firehouse and sit down with anybody that wants to talk, as long as you want to talk. I know some of these things are tough. It's not possible for us to make you like it or be happy with it, but we do have a responsibility to make you understand it. And if you leave here tonight and you don't understand it, I beg you to call me, because it is definitely something that we care about. We do care about you. You're not being excluded. It was one focus that just happened to piggyback on with the 3% raises that came around for everybody across the board. 911 is difficult and stressful. That's just part of the deal. So we're going to address this issue tonight, and then if we've got another one we can address, monitor it, bring it to our attention. My cell phone number is available. Call me. I'll come meet with you, discuss it at great detail. But just to say they're getting 10, we should get 10, that doesn't, I'm in the business world, it doesn't work that way over there. But I'm comfortable with where we are right now.
Councilman Burnett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And to Dan's point, you know, he and I came forward with the 3% cost of living adjustment to be something that we looked at that was codified within the city, that was done 3 or 4 or 5 months ago. So we do constantly evaluate it. And I've learned up here in 4 years that there's very few things that you like 100% of. And that is probably, you know, the understatement of public service, is that if you get to a place where you're 80% satisfied, a lot of times that's good enough. I wish there were things that were different. I wish we had $25 million. We wouldn't have this conversation. But I do genuinely, we've all seen the needs in law enforcement change over the course of the last 18 months. And aside from 911, which seems perpetually hard to recruit and maintain, we have seen policing in this country become something that, with the economy that is as robust as this country has right now, and the lack of people in the workforce, and the attitude politically that has changed towards our police officers, it's a difficult thing. And I know that there's a day coming where that shoe is on the other foot again, and you hate that you can't make everybody happy, but a lot of times that's really just how this role goes. And I'll yield the floor. Thank you.
Councilman Richard.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with all of the sentiments that have been shared up here tonight. I think that when we heard this a week ago, I look at first responders as an entire group. I don't separate them out in my mind in regards to police, fire, and 911, and I think that as a city we're stronger for that, for having one public safety department. And so it was, this time last week, council did not have the data that we currently have. Staff had shared with us that they had done their research and had data to support the fact that in 2 segments that the market was moving much faster than what we were currently paying our folks in those departments. We got the data Friday night. We got data again last night. As much as I want to treat all of our first responders the same, the marketplace is telling us something different right now, and we have to react to that. And that's what I'm basing my decision on. I don't think, and I think everybody up here has said to Chris and to staff, stay on top of what's happening in the fire side. And the minute we start to see any market rates changing that put us at a disadvantage, you need to bring that forward to council so that we have an opportunity to move on it. Thank you.
Has everybody gone now? Okay. So I'll reiterate some of what I said last week, probably add a little more because I've had a week to think about it. And I've responded to some emails as I thought through some of these things. First of all, if anybody believes that the people on this dais don't have the utmost respect for all of our first responders, you're seriously mistaken. When I got elected 3.5 years ago, the first thing I did was ask Bob to find us a human resources professional that would make sure that we were always treating our employees as well as anybody else in our area, and hopefully one of the best in the states. And Chris Randall came on board and has done a tremendous job. I can't tell you how much of our time has been spent looking at compression issues, having discussions about how we can work it out, how we compare. We spent tens of thousands of dollars on studies to evaluate where the market is and where the market is changing. And I meet every month with Director Robinson, and we talk about public safety. How are they going with the recruiting? If I had my magic wand, we'd be paying 911 operators as much as anybody else in public safety. Because since I've been here, we can't keep them. It's a low barrier to entry. It doesn't take a tremendous amount of education to get that position. But sitting there and taking those calls and working the shifts that they make drives people out of the business. And it's not just us. I remember a conversation with Bob Regas several years ago, right after I became mayor and started talking about it. I was like, well, Bob, why don't we pay more for 911 operators? Well, you know, this is what they do across the country. Well, does everybody across the country have 100% turnover in a couple of years? And he was like, yeah. I said, well, then we don't want to be like the rest of the country. And I've gone through, and to reiterate what Dan Merkel said, quite frankly, I would prefer to have these conversations where we can air it out in the fire station. But this is a public hearing, and it's been brought up, and I don't mind having this conversation publicly, because publicly I say the same thing I do privately, is gentlemen and women in our fire are just as important as any employee in the world. And it's the same goes for 911 and our police. And I would be ashamed if the report that we had gotten had shown that we didn't have the best pay with our nearest competitors, and we didn't match up well with just about any department in the state. So I don't want anybody to get the impression that this is something arbitrary or that we're trying to dismiss our firefighters, because that's not the case. We have a limited pool of money, and there's a lot of things that our bosses, the 67,000 people who hired us to sit up here and make these tough decisions for them, want. And there's a lot of things we need. You know, I mean, I already know that in the next year or two, we're going to spend $2 million having to upgrade our 911 Intel radios and computers and all this stuff. And we're still moving forward with these compensation packages at this time because it's necessary. I know, I hear the discussion about morale, and I appreciate that. And I know that over the years there's been a friendly rivalry, and the jobs are both heroes. I mean, you save lives and you protect people, whether it's police or fire. But the jobs are different. They just are. You know, you were talking about public safety as one unit. We don't pay 911 what we pay firefighters. And so while I appreciate the fact that every firefighter believes that they should earn as much as a policeman, and I don't dispute that if that's what the demand is. But the fact is that there's no defund the firemen riots going on across this nation. I haven't heard a fireman being assassinated on the streets of Dallas. It's a different environment. The comments we're hearing, we hear from our officers. Their families want them out. And when they try to get into a police force academy or something like that, their parents don't want them in there. I mean, I've had that conversation with somebody 2 days ago. He said his son was going to become a police officer in a neighboring county, and he had told him not to. Don't do it. It's different, and it's harder to keep those good police officers. That's why they were the top priority. I hear that these adjustments may be coming forward from other departments around us for fire as well. And I guarantee you, if that's the case, then we'll be looking at that. But they are different jobs. I sit on the advisory board at Wellstar North Fulton Hospital. And I tried to think of some way that I could share with the public how I view this compensation issue between fire and police. And so I thought about it. It's like, you know, who's more important, a brain surgeon or a heart surgeon? Because they're both critical. They both save lives. And it's a skill that not many people possess or want to do. But the fact is, a brain surgeon makes about $150,000 a year more than a heart surgeon. That doesn't mean they're any better. Doesn't mean they're any more important to this community. It just means that fewer people can or will do it. And by God, The only reason it's more important is if you need one. Because if you need a heart surgeon, it doesn't matter how much he's getting paid or she's getting paid or how much the brain surgeon is. So I think we're just in a tough situation. We've got to do the best we can. And I respect our staff for making decisions based on the situation at hand. And I know that they will continue to evaluate. And if they see things changing out there, if I don't hear about it first, because I'm always asking. I mean, I'm asking every mayor around here. I was asking the sheriff's department, the sheriff of Fulton County the other day. What are you doing? They're giving signing bonuses. They're giving retention bonuses. He came on board a year ago and he wanted to hire 300 sheriff's deputies for Fulton County. So I asked him, you've done all this. You're spending all this money. You're giving raises, retention bonuses for sheriff's deputies. What's the net effect? He said, I'm exactly where I was a year ago because he's got more people retiring than he can recruit. I mean, it's not that we're not paying attention to what's out there. It's that we've only got so much resources and they've got to go where it's most effective. So that's where I am. That's why I do support it. And that's why as soon as we see anything change for firefighters or any of our other employees, we'll be back at this dais talking about it again. That being said, the motion was to approve the mid-year budget amendment as written by staff. All those in favor, please vote yes. Otherwise, vote accordingly. And it does pass unanimously. Thanks. So that'll wrap up new business. Oh, nope. Sorry, Pete. I almost slipped by you, man. I forgot because we moved that one back up to the old business. We do have one new business item, and it is the Kimball Bridge road tree planting.
Yes, good evening, Mayor and Council. We're getting to the point of landscaping Kimball Bridge Road between North Point and Waters. We have an on-call vendor, maintenance vendor is Rupert Landscape, and they provided us a proposal of $470,315.61 to plant 179 trees along the corridor, and they are anticipating being done by the end of February. And then in the spring, we'll do the shrubs and the extra ground cover.
Any questions from council on this item? Thanks, sir. Ms. Shapiro, do we have any public comment cards on this item?
We do not, sir.
But if anyone would like to come forward and speak on tree planting on Kimball Bridge Road, now's your chance. Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Do I have a motion from council?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I'll make a motion to please award Kimball Bridge Road tree planting to Rupert Landscape for an amount not to exceed $470,315.61 for the purchase, installation, and watering of trees along Kimball Bridge Road and North Point Parkway to Waters Road, and authorize the mayor to execute all necessary documents.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilwoman Richard, a second by Councilman Burnett, and that was to award Kimball Bridge Road tree planting to Rupert Landscape for an amount not to exceed $470,315.61. All those in favor of the motion, please vote. Discussion?
I know that the old penis cartoon, not everything can be 5 cents, but $2,600 a tree, that's market value installed, I guess?
Yes, it also has a 2-year warranty, plus it's got the water requirements too. So if the
water is in there too?
Yes.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Any other questions? All those in favor of the motion, please vote yes. Otherwise, vote accordingly. And Councilman Binder is not with us. John, just come in here and raise your right hand, please. Oh, Councilman Binder is with us. Y'all got to quit shuffling like that, man. We did. But then he reset because Councilman Binder was coming back in and you were leaving. So. And it does pass unanimous.
Mayor Council.
Thank you, Pete. Appreciate it. Pete, don't go anywhere, man. Oh, okay. You need notes? That's a first. So the next item up under workshop will be the Georgia 400 Express Lane KBR Bridge replacement. That's Kimball Bridge Road, for those of you that may not know that.
Yes, staff is looking for some direction on this one, Mayor and Council. GDOT has separated the Georgia 400 project, and they are piecemealing 3 bridges along the corridor: Post Road, Roberts Drive, and Kimball Bridge Road for ourselves. So those will be one bid going out after the first of the year, and the bids will be due in April. But part of that is the design build team needs to understand how we like to move forward with our utilities. And specifically, we have stormwater and we have traffic fiber that has to get relocated. And what we received in your packet is a MOU between us and GDOT to the design build firms of how we'd like to proceed. So staff has made the recommendation that we want the design build team to design the relocations as well as install the relocations, construction through the contract, instead of staff designing it or city procuring design work and hiring a separate contractor to do the work. We want it all included within their project. So that's our recommendation. Didn't know if it needed to go, I was talking to Mike Stacy, in front of you guys for a business item next week, or if it's items like this through the design process, you have to move forward, but since it's an MOU, trying to figure out how best to maneuver that, because this could be one of many coming down the line with the design build team.
Any thoughts or input from Pete? Councilmember Burnett.
What is the downside of each option of the 2?
It's basically time. It's like it's easy to get on our council agendas. I mean, it's rather quickly working with Lauren. So it's just time and how it works within our schedules.
Okay, I didn't know if there was more to it than.
No, it's a no cost. So we're basically saying, take care of this, GDOT, put it in the contract price.
We
already have an IGA with the price tag that we would have already, so that doesn't decrease or increase.
Do they do good work?
We'll find out who the team is, but I'm sure they do.
Thanks.
Councilman Richard.
Thank you. Pete, we have, Kimball Bridge is one of, 3 bridges that are going to be redone with the Express Lane project?
Correct.
So the reason they picked Kimball first was?
Primarily has the least amount of right-of-way challenges and utility challenges to work through.
So it's the easiest out of the 3?
So,
okay.
or I say the simplest.
Any other questions from council? You got what you need, Pete?
I guess, should go forward MOU to a business item, or?
If it's a no-cost MOU, I think that it can go forward with the 2 of us talking and keeping the liaison in the loop. However, I think if there's going to be an MOU that may later lead, and I know it's not the case here, but may later lead to an increased contract price for a contract that you will review, it does make sense to bring it in front of council for a workshop, just so you're aware of the general direction that it's trending, so that if it needs to be interrupted or otherwise addressed, you can have input before we get to a final proposed contract and you say, well, how did we get here as far as numbers? But that's just my suggestion. We don't want to bring every single thing in front of you and bog this process down. On the other hand, I think it might make sense to do some of those where they're going to be later impacting contract prices.
And it should be noted that since GDOT is separating this bridge from the regular packet of the whole entire corridor, the bridge will be an additional 20 feet longer in length. And they're doing that so they don't procure the design build team doing the 400 corridor any unforeseen challenges. So it'll be completely out of the work zone. And the team has already said to staff that there will be no increase to our contribution. We already have that IGA solidified, so we're still at that $4.8 million contribution.
Okay, good. Councilman Binder.
And then just kind of, I think, probably piggybacking on that. So the Alpharetta design standard that we're looking at, so that's part of the increased cost that you were mentioning?
Correct. Yes, that was adding the aesthetics, the lighting, the wider sidewalks, the beautification components.
Okay.
And that's for that 4 point for all 3 bridges.
Yep, okay.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Pete, I would agree with Mr. Stacy as far as if it's not a significant cost or within our range, and I would think that we all could work on it, and especially these things that are not, that you have a better recommendation as far as getting it done and time-wise, that'll save some time for you all and the staff through GDOT, so.
That works.
All right, thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, sir. So that'll wrap up the workshop. So if there's anyone here that's waited for a public comment opportunity, now is your time to do so. Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Do we have any reports? I'm seeing no reports, so ladies and gentlemen, we are adjourned.